boop, boop. Yep.
I have dreamt of the 3.5 years since I have started my podcast. I thought they were all going to be in person, but I started in June of 2020, so that didn't happen.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second, because I think you're getting into meat, which is fun.
Okay.
And I don't want to miss any of it. Let's heat it up. Heat up the pan. Heat up. Get the oil in. Is there oil? Welcome to In the Act, a radio program on process and the creative life. Creativity does not just start and stop with artists. We all make aesthetic or guiding decisions. Our aim is to talk through the process and investigate how we choose to express ourselves and live creatively. We are connecting with people about their lives. That is the subject of our show. Broadcasting from Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin on Mead Community Radio, I am Erica Hunsinger, and this is In the Act. And today's guest on In the Act is Margret Petrie.
Hello, Erica.
Hello.
This is so great.
I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for asking me to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it seems like a natural, like, well, if you're coming, then we should have a conversation and like continue and explore your mind a little bit, mind and heart. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm usually on the other side of the microphone, so this is, a little unusual for me.
Yeah. Tell us about that. What do you mean?
Well, so I host...
Or me about that.
Sure. I host a podcast. I created it I think I started in June of 2020, called Authentic Obsessions. And I talk to artists and creative people about, I think the official tagline is the joy and uncertainty that fuels their work. So I wanted it to be not about technique or business side of art or anything like that, but really like what goes on behind. What are the struggles that people have? What are the obstacles they're encountering? And how do they get through them? How do they keep showing up despite all of those things that get in the way of living a creative life? Because I think it's so interesting, and
it is.
So many people can relate to it, which you know too, because the people you interview aren't always artists, but you talk about creative expression. So
Totally.
I just want people to feel seen and heard and less alone when they're sitting in their studio all by themselves, right?
Totally. Yeah. Speaking from, like, that's my heart. I totally hear you. That's really meaningful. And I love that you're elevating the struggle and the process, because, like, being in the studio by yourself or getting rejected, or having failures, or not being seen, or having a stockpile of work, or,
There are a million things that you don't see on social media. And a long time ago, not that long ago really, but when we didn't have social media, I think artists either maybe they fell into a couple camps of they did have a big community or they had no one. And so for those people who just sat alone in their home offices, they worked on the weekends.
Yeah.
What did they know? You're thinking everyone else is being successful at exhibits, and you see the end product. You don't see the process of all the crap that you have to go through
It's
to
really
get
true.
to the other side.
Yeah, it's really true. And I think how you present or how you frame yourself impacts then how people view who you are. I mean, okay, sorry, that seemed really vague. Well, like, I love people, and I'm an extrovert. And so when I go out or when I'm in a social, like, I'm like smiling and happy. I'm so excited to be around people. And I can, I was a minister's daughter, so I can like socialize really well. I was trained in pretty well to be a social person, I think. But my experience by myself is very, very different. It's not like the smiley person by myself in my studio. It's a real struggle, right? And I think that kind of shining light that you're doing is such a valuable knowledge for people to get into, for people to hear the other stories and narratives of self, because I think that helps us all,
Yeah, I think about one of the reasons I did this is because I would find an artist or, excuse me, or someone who I was really interested in, and I would dive really deep into their story. I'd look on their website. I'd look for interviews that they'd done. I would read things that were published about them. And it seemed often, not always, but often, they would answer the same questions over and over again in like 6 different interviews.
Like what? Can you give us examples?
Yeah. So, well, my very close experience is my husband is an author. And so when he releases a book and it comes out on pub day, he does 30 interviews in 2 days, right? Everyone asks him the same question. When you go and you do an author event, people want to know, like, how did you get an agent? And what is your writing style like? And what does your office look like? And what does your day look like? And do you work on the weekends? And how do you come up with your characters? And so he would answer those same questions over and over again. And I found that with artists too. And I found myself wanting to dig a little bit deeper into some of those questions.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody can cover everything anywhere. It's not a fault. I'm not faulting anyone's interview style or anything. It's just that I wanted more.
Yeah.
So I would start taking notes like...
And it's okay if you fault our interview style too. I don't know. It's like, I feel like we should have standards or whatever.
Well,
anyway.
That too, yes.
Sorry.
But anyway, so I would start making notes of like, this is really interesting. This artist talked about their subject matter and why they are doing figurative and abstract together, and how that came about. I wanted to dig a little bit deeper, like really, how did it come about? What happened when you were a kid? What happened? Like, tell me stories about how you came to be the person that you are.
Yeah.
And so whenever I interview someone, I do a lot of research. I try and find everything I can on them. And then I read through everything. And then I start picking apart like, oh, this is really interesting. I want to know more about this.
Wow.
So I just... I don't know when this is coming out, but my next interview that's getting released is by a woman who's been interviewed several times and on big podcasts. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What am I going to ask her? She's already been on, big ones. And so I just did something different. In the beginning, I said, for those of you who want to know about her background, how she went to art school, her career, go listen to these 2 interviews.
Yeah.
I'm going to dig into something a little bit different.
Sure.
So I'm hoping that I'm filling a niche and a spot that other people aren't, or that is just going to reach different people.
I love it. I mean, you're doing a lot of detective work and research.
That's so fun for me.
Yeah, it sounds it. I mean, you're like lit up when you're talking about it.
So I have to say, I was listening to a bunch of the interviews that you've done, and I know that you interview John Michael Kohler arts industry residents, fellows, or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And I went to a talk not too long ago, randomly was visiting the museum and went into an artist talk. And I'll probably never interview her, but I took out my little notepad and I started writing down all these questions. Like, I just couldn't not do it. I was so curious about why this, why that. And I just wanted to dig deeper. And maybe it's a conversation I have with her one-on-one.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah.
But I guess curiosity just sort of drives my interest in this.
I love that. And, probably they're open to it too, to have that conversation, because when I think artists are in a unique position, maybe, or in all categories, of like trying to find more, trying to dig more, trying to reflect more to get to the next space. Like, I feel like our drive for growth and for newness is kind of is a hard press, So like if you reached out to her, my guess is she'd be like, oh yeah, because I want to know more too. I feel like in every conversation, and tell me if you find this too, in every conversation that I have with people, they're always finding out something new, right? They're linking something up that hadn't been linked before. And I think that's why I like having the conversations too, is because we're co-creating or co-investigating
Absolutely.
ourselves and their work and their life, and what are the patterns, or what are those hinge moments or something,
And to have someone really listen and dig deep into your work and wonder why you're doing it, and I think one of the things
that's key, I think.
I don't know if it just makes me maybe a little bit unique, is that I'm not a professional artist. I have done art. I have exhibited. I've sold some work. There was a period of time, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so, I thought, I'm going to try and be a professional artist. And I've always had a day job. And so I started dabbling and learning all kinds of different things. And what I realized about myself is that I didn't have that drive to sell my work and be a professional artist. I have a drive to create something.
Yep.
And I have a drive to learn about what others are doing. I've taken a lot of workshops, and from tissue paper collage to quilting to, abstract painting to all kinds of things. And what I remember about those are the other people in those workshops and those classes and what their stories were. I don't really remember what we made.
Yeah.
I have all that stuff.
Right.
But what I loved was hearing why people were there.
Yeah.
And what drove them to keep making things with their hands.
Yeah.
And then you hear stories about when I was a kid, I used to do this, or when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to do this, or, and everyone comes at it from a different path. And I just find it so fascinating that it's all about human connection, right?
Yeah.
And this emotional connection that you can make with someone.
Yep.
Through your words, creative expression.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what you're so interested in.
Yeah.
I just think the whole thing is, I don't know, it just gives me so much joy.
Totally. Yeah. It's exciting.
It is.
It's seriously exciting. When you were talking about the workshops, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go to that one. Oh my gosh, I want to go to that. I would go to all workshops all the time if I didn't have a day job and do other things. Or little mini groups, of creation. What do you think? You're a creator, right? And you're interested in seeing the stories of how they became that way, or what introduced them, or what is your trajectory of why do you feel like you're have the need to create?
Oh, that's so interesting.
Because that's one of your questions. Did I get it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I do ask people that. The tables aren't usually turned on me.
Yeah.
It's funny because I never thought of myself as a kid. I never thought of myself as an artist. You hear these stories of since I was 3, I've held crayons and paintbrushes, and I've always drawn, and I was the kid in high school who.
Yep.
And that was never me.
Yeah.
However,
I love that.
I think about my mom now in retrospect.
Yeah.
And I think about how creative she really was.
Right.
She was not an artist. She didn't call herself that.
Yep.
But she was always making something.
Yeah.
Maybe that was because, she grew up during the Depression.
Sure.
And I think one of her favorite expressions was, use it up, make do, or do without.
Use it up, make do, or do without. Sure.
She never bought anything. We were always, and let me tell you, by the time she died, she was 100. And when we were cleaning out all of her stuff. And we did that I don't know, she was in the same house I grew up in until she died. And so, but there were cabinets filled with like so much paper. You can't even believe, scrap paper, different colored paper. She would make these things that she called playbooks, which I was thinking about, which sounds so ridiculous. Playbooks.
So cool.
But she made them for like second graders, I think. She took plain sheets of paper, maybe like, I don't know, they were random sizes, but we're talking maybe, 4 by 6 inches or so. Maybe they were a little bit bigger. And she would sew them together with a cover that was made out of maybe thicker construction paper, nothing very fancy at all. And then on
like
the
sewing machine?
No, hand. She would hand stitch them together.
All right.
And then on the front of every cover, she would take a like a little magazine or something from a catalog that she had cut out. So like she would get I want to say bookstores used to, they still send out, catalogs of books, but she used to get these children's ones and there were like covers of children's books.
Yeah.
So she would cut those out and have little, and then she would glue them on top of
like 5 little kittens or
yeah,
something.
Yeah, exactly.
Book.
Or, someone would have like all the ABCs on a big sheet of paper and she would cut each one out and then she would do 26, each one with a different letter. And there were probably 25 kids in the class. So she would give a stack of them to the local teacher and she would hand them out and the kids would just write in them or they would make, draw in them. She made thousands of those.
No way.
I am not even kidding you.
Thousands of playbooks for second graders.
I still have some and she would give some to us. And so every time any of her kids would find like a catalog that came in the mail with like a seed catalog with flowers, we'd always give them to her. So she was using all of this stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And what else did we make? Oh my gosh. She made gift cards, Christmas tags, she made all of her own note cards all the time, and she would make them for other people.
Do you think she would have considered herself creative?
I think she would consider herself kind of scrappy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. It's
actually
like that terminology thing. Yeah,
many years ago, I actually tried to interview her, and I have the recording somewhere. It's a terrible interview because she the audio is really bad.
Yeah.
So I never have published it. But she was like, well, I don't know. We just did that. That's just what we did.
Right.
She was very
right. Matter of fact
about it. And she was never one to draw attention to herself.
Yeah.
But I think I got that from her. I know I got some creative gene from her.
Yeah.
And my dad actually painted like a very long time ago. I have a couple oil paintings of his, which they're not great, but like he did that. He did some work, but it was never really talked about.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like a choice.
Yeah.
When I went to college, that was never on my radar.
Yeah.
That I could do anything like that. So I don't even know what your original question was.
Why do you think that was?
I don't know.
Cool.
Now what do we do?
We're going to take a break. I'm going to reintroduce you. Take a break.
Okay.
Take some water. Ground our feet. We'll continue that conversation in a second. Whatever. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay, let's stop there because Margaret doesn't know the answer to this. And
welcome back to In the Act radio program on process and the creative life. I don't know. I'm just going through the whole thing now. I'm Erica Hunsinger. We are here with Margret Petrie. Woo! During the break, little water break. And I don't even remember what the last question was. Like, where did that?
You asked me why it wasn't on my radar to like get an art degree.
Yeah, I think because
I wasn't that kid.
Yeah.
I wasn't that kid in high school. So, okay.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Sure.
So I think I was in 8th grade, or maybe I was a freshman in high school. I made an art class. I made a carving of a rabbit.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know, 6 or 8 inches long. I still have it to this day. It's pretty good. It doesn't totally suck. It's just a carving of a rabbit. It looks like a rabbit. It stands up. I got a B- on that thing.
Ugh.
And, you know, 1 grade, like, can really screw you up forever.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the art kid in the art room.
Yeah.
And it felt like you had to be that kid that
Yeah.
had to be your clique. This
Yep.
was in
Yeah.
the late 70s.
Totally.
I graduated in 81. So,
Yep.
like, that was an era where you had to, like, fall into this group, and that wasn't me. And
Yep.
so no one ever nurtured that part of me. No one ever said, did you think I didn't have a champion? Anything
Right.
like that. And it wasn't like I
So
sat around drawing
important.
anyway.
And to be judged on, like, I was just talking to my partner about this recently about how do you qualify your grade for art? Like if the
Right.
person like worked really hard on something, and maybe it doesn't quote unquote live up to like whatever standards or, you know, art, whatever that is, right? But another person like made something and it took them like half an hour, and it's like, you know, a mirror replica of a rabbit, right? But then the A goes to the replication in terms of hierarchy, and the person who worked for like 6 hours and like feeling it and touching it, moving it around in it their own way, how is that qualified in the same way? It's so unfortunate because then because of that you get squashed a little bit. Right? And because you don't fit in, like we want to fit in, we want to be accepted, we want to feel like we're seen for the output that we do, you know, the energy that we put into something. We want to be seen about that.
Do they still give grades in art class?
Some do, yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
That's terrible. They should outlaw that.
I know.
I feel like there's a difference too between art and craft, which is a whole nother conversation.
It is.
But like if you're making a chair, I can see how you could judge someone on the structure or right. There are like functional
Yeah.
artwork or something.
Yeah.
But like to have someone tell you your painting is terrible,
Yeah.
or I don't know, we learn, you always get better. There's
Yeah.
a difference between having a mentor or having someone help you with technique and process
Yeah.
and getting better than saying, nope, this isn't for you.
Right.
Because everyone, preaching to the choir here, but everyone is creative in their own way. And
Yes.
you can't squish that down because that
No.
helps everyone. I think it would just be
Yes.
a nicer country if everyone was allowed to express their creativity. I just think
Yeah.
people would be nicer.
Yes. What does it look like inside your body?
Right.
What does it feel like? What are you gravitating towards? What material are you like, I have to work with concrete? Or are you like, I have to move, I have to dance across this prairie, you know?
Exactly.
I have to crawl through the dirt. And that is my creative expression. Whatever it looks like, do more of that for yourself.
So one of the things that I realized lately
I agree with you. Sorry.
is that my creativity. So I was doing a lot of like jelly printing and collage work.
Yeah.
And as I was beginning to work on this podcast that I'm doing, and it seemed like I didn't have enough time in the day to do my day job, do everything else, you know, of life. Do artwork and do a podcast. And so something had to give.
Yeah.
And I let go of the art that I was creating for a while. And what I learned and realized is that I didn't miss it. And then I felt guilty for not missing it.
Oh.
And then I thought, oh, I'm not an artist because I can't call myself an artist or a creative person because I'm not painting, cutting, pasting.
Yep.
Sewing, doing whatever it is that.
The fine arts.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And then I thought, is curating, can that be creative? Can the podcast be my creative expression? And it's taken me years. Sitting here right now today, I can honestly say and be proud of the fact that I have this podcast and that it feeds my creativity in a way that that making a quilt does, or that getting really immersed in collage work for a day. It's the same. It does the same thing to me.
Cool.
Does that make me weird? I don't know. Does that happen to other people who are like
cool
interviewing others? I don't know, but
yeah.
I really get into this, and I obviously do this for no money. The thing that you would do if they didn't pay you.
Right. Yeah.
Well, this is what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's so valuable that you recognize that. Recognizing that in yourself is so important. And so many of us don't get to do that. That it's not, we're so boxed in. I'm like, what is creativity? And creativity is like, oh, well, if you paint, if you sculpt, and if you dance, maybe if you write, maybe you're an artist too,
Right.
But those are the creative boxes. And if they don't fulfill like in that space, then what else you're doing isn't creative,
and
right? And I think that we're changing that landscape and we're pushing back on that. But most of the creatives know that, I think. But a lot of the lay people are like, oh, well, I'm not an artist. I'm not creative.
Right.
They've already been smashed. So they don't understand, Jill at the grocery store that put on like, crazy green and yellow for Green Bay Packers Day, and she like knit her own slippers and like, her own hat and put on earrings, and those are a way of expressing themselves that feels comfortable in a place that she's going to feel accepted, right? And that's like we need to have more of those spaces, breaking down some of those walls and finding and tuning into where are you finding that joy inside? Where are you finding that spark where you're like, ooh, this is it. How do we find more of that? How do we get to more of that joy?
I think you just hit on something that is so important, is that it's not always about a physical product that you make.
Yeah,
that you send out into the world, right?
Right.
And so many people are like, well, I'm not an artist because I'm not selling my work. I'm not an artist because I don't paint. I don't have something to sell.
Right.
And it's just so not
it's
about
so
that.
tied to capitalism. Yeah. And success for an artist is if you've sold something. Like, oh, I did this show. I even hear artists do it. Like, oh, I was in this show and I sold all my pieces. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. Like, is that, good for you. I'm glad you're proud of yourself.
Right, that's
but that
great.
doesn't equate that, I don't know. It's just is a very...
Well, you're not better than anyone else because
Thank you
sold your product.
Thank
and
you.
This person over here is dancing on the town square.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think capitalism really has taken so much joy out of the ability to live our creative lives, honestly, because we're so slugged down with like trying to find a job that pays well enough so that we can afford healthcare and like rent or our home mortgage and like take care of our families and ourselves. And it's like the last thing that we can think about is like, well, how do we find joy in our lives? It's like, it's like a big FU almost, like I'm just still trying to survive over here,
Oh, exactly.
And I think that like, that's where the real upset that I have about creativity is, because we all have it, every single one of us. And we're, we don't have the time or ability sometimes to be able to fortify it.
And there's also this big push to create a business out of your creative expression.
How do you monetize your art?
Monetize it. Here's how all the business of art.
Yeah.
And it's great for people who want to do that.
Sure.
But also it feels like for those of us who aren't doing that we're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you? Oh, you could. Here's how you can monetize the podcast. Here's how you can. And believe me, I'm thinking about that.
Sure.
And then I'm like, oh, but I want it to be accessible to everyone, and I don't want to have people pay for it. But also, I spend a lot of time on it.
Right.
So it'd be nice to get paid for some of it. So,
the problem that I have here's where I have the problem, I guess, is when I'm trying to get my words out. Sorry. When you're starting to make artwork in whatever form for money, you're going to be, your needle, your compass is going to be driven. Your art is going to be driven by what's the most popular sold. And so your output is going to potentially and most likely be aberrant eventually from where and who you are down the line.
So,
does that make sense?
Absolutely. And this is really interesting. So I have worked with some artists and creative people as a coach. And people who coach artists are often, I feel like there's this thing about like, okay, I'm going to help you make a living. I'm going to help you become a professional artist. And what are your goals? And it's all about like, I want to get in a gallery and be represented, and I want to sell more work.
Yeah.
And the people that I talk to, which is a whole, it's a whole subsection of artists, are people who don't necessarily have to make a living or want to make a living selling their art.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that their goals aren't any less important.
Yeah.
So I have a client who wants her work to be seen. She doesn't care about selling her work, but she's making things that she thinks could have an impact on other people.
Yeah.
And she just wants her art to be seen.
Yeah.
There are people who want to do residencies because they want to be in a community of people, or they want to have some time away from their home life.
Yeah.
Or, people have all kinds of different goals aside from selling their work.
Yes.
So, and yes, that's a first world problem, I guess. If you have enough money that you can sustain your life through a day job or whatever means that you have, and that you can do this on the side, and not everyone has time to do that, or energy or resources. I get that.
Yeah.
And I know I'm speaking to not everyone when I'm talking about this, but I just think we have to validate the fact that you don't have to sell your work to be an artist, and you don't have to want to sell your work to be an artist.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Boom.
Boom. Yeah. Do you think that that's like something that you came to while doing your coaching?
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's where I had always landed, right? I rented studio space because I thought it would give me a community and I could find other artists. And the studio spaces that I ended up renting, I think I was in 3 different places. And of course, everyone has like day jobs, and they weren't there, in the 3 hours that I had one day a week in the middle of the day. No one wanted to talk. They wanted to work. Obviously, that makes total sense. But I was looking for a community and watching other people really dig into their work, excuse me, in a way that I was not. I felt like I was playing.
Yeah.
And I didn't I didn't fit in those spaces of people who wanted to make a career out of being a professional artist.
Right.
So I felt very, I don't know, I was very like out of sorts. I was like, I don't belong here. I don't belong there.
Sure.
I guess I'll just stay at home and do my little thing. But I was craving people and conversation.
Yeah.
And I just realized that really what I'm interested in is human connection, some collaboration, and this curiosity thing that drives me so much about why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so I stepped away from thinking about the business of becoming a professional artist and leaning into this other thing.
Yeah.
Knowing that both of those things weren't going to make me any money anyway, so it didn't really matter, right?
Right.
Which way I went.
Yeah. But those are hard places to be in, to feel like you're disconnected, to feel as if you're alone, to feel as if like, oh, I planned this out and now it doesn't work. Like I'm here in 3 hours and I'm just playing, right? And the just playing thing I kind of want to talk about too, because I think that's real interesting.
Okay, I have one more thing to say before we talk about just playing.
Yeah, do it.
So I think one of the things that is unique about me, did I say this already?
I don't
know.
Did
I just think it?
Maybe.
That because I'm not a professional artist, when I'm interviewing someone else, my questions might seem, to me sometimes, they seem very simple. Like everyone probably knows this, but here's what I want to ask you.
Sure.
And oftentimes what I get back is, oh, that's a really interesting question. Here, let's talk about this. Because I think that it's something everyone knows who's in the art world.
Yeah.
I don't know how you frame all your stuff or what it takes to load up to get ready for an art fair and what that does physically to your body.
Right.
And I just think that's so fascinating. So coming from a place where I don't know, like the inside baseball piece of it, I can ask more questions that actually other people want to know, but they're afraid to ask because they think everyone already knows it.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. And the fact I don't really understand the inside baseball thing, though. Didn't you say that? Sorry.
I did say that. You know, like everyone knows, you think everyone else knows what's behind, like how the sausage is made.
Oh, right.
Everyone else knows that piece but you.
Right.
It's like raising your hand in a room full of people asking the question that you think is probably really stupid, but everyone else is really happy that you asked.
Right.
And as you get older, you don't really care what anyone else thinks when you ask the stupid question.
Right, yeah. And everyone's relieved that you're asking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Play. What was your question about play?
It was, but I mean, I'm like stuck on the question. Like, how do we get to the place of asking more questions then? Like, how do we...
You listen more.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Have you always been a good listener? Like, sorry,
geez.
that wasn't a good question. Actually, I don't like that question. Listening, I mean, I think listening is super important, and I have to shut my mouth a lot, like on purpose. Like I have to like literally jaw clench my mouth to listen better.
You know, that it's really interesting because I went through this coaching certification process, and what I learned from that is that I don't necessarily want to be a coach full time, but I did learn a lot of things that helped me in podcast interviews, because coaching is all about listening and reflecting back and seeing in someone else what it is that they're struggling with and how to get that out of them, just to ask them a question. You know, why do you think that's true? Or tell me more about that feeling that happens to you. So I've gotten better at listening and letting people talk a little bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I love about what I wanted to do with in-person interviews was make sure I could see body language and people's eyes and whether they're nodding, whether they're looking down, what's happening. Are they sitting up? Are they tense?
Yeah.
I do all my interviews over Zoom so I can see people.
Yeah.
I don't use the video, but I have to see people.
Yeah.
In order to do that. And I think that's a big part of listening too, is just looking for that nonverbal language.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Right. What
totally.
do they look like? Yeah. They look like fish. They always look
They do look like fish.
Mine is really, I love, it looks like a skeletal fish.
And
Yeah.
the ums, when I love all the verbal tics people do. People have so many different ways they do pauses.
Oh, interesting. Welcome back to In the Act. This is Erica Hunsinger. This is. We are here with Margret Petrie.
Hello.
Hi. And I just want to dive right into that being a good listener is also picking up on, what did you say, what people do when they are thinking about something to say, that they have tics or were like ums or...
It's so interesting after, I don't know. Oh, so I'm almost on my 99th episode comes out.
What?
Next week. I know. Very exciting.
That's so cool.
Big things planned for episode 100.
You're 51.
Oh, look at that. You're halfway there. And in the scheme of things, I'm sorry, 100 really isn't that many because I've been doing it for 3.5 years. But I just want to say that the first 35 weeks, I did one every single week while I was working full time. And when I didn't know how to edit, and when it was taking me like 15 to 20 hours to edit every podcast. It was insane.
Wow.
But I took some breaks, I took a month off here, a month off there.
Why did you do that?
Why did I take a month off? Why did I do them every week?
Yeah.
Because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
I had people. I just had people to interview, and I'm going to go back to that. Now I've said it out loud. Next year, I'm going to go back to weekly episodes. Okay, I'm getting off topic.
Sorry.
What was the question?
Just the
verbal
patterns.
tics.
Yeah.
So out of all those interviews, it's so interesting because as I edit, and I know, Erica, you don't edit, but I do. And so when I go in, everyone has these different sort of verbal tics when they're transitioning from one thought to the next, or sometimes it just happens. I'm sure I have them too. Is a really common one.
Sure.
Some people click their mouth or something. They like make a little click, a noise with their mouth that they don't even know they're doing. It's just in like everyday speech, right? And you wouldn't notice it, but it really shows up.
Yeah.
On an interview like this, an audio file.
Fascinating.
I don't know. People pause for a really long time, which I don't mind at all because I'd rather give someone a lot of time to gather their thoughts.
Yep.
It takes me a little bit to come up with a question, a comment sometimes. So
sure.
I totally get that.
Well, I think when you're in the creative realm, it's not linear. Mm-hmm. So it comes out in like root, looks like a root or lightning,
Right.
Veins of a leaf or something. It just like kind of spreads out. It's all connected to the same leaf, but it's like, why are we at the tip? I thought we were talking about the stem, like
it's like a spider web of ideas. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's okay. That platform and leveling is okay.
I used to be so nervous about having questions, making sure like I asked certain sets of questions that covered different things.
Yeah.
And now I have a list of questions. I have some topics to cover, but I don't really care where it goes.
Yeah.
I just think the best thing is to have a natural conversation.
Yeah.
And the people who prep a whole lot for interviews are usually the least engaging ones.
They have a set expectation of how it's going to go or want it to go, or a format in which they want it to
They practice.
put it in. Oh, yeah.
It's like they practice.
Yeah.
It's like I send them this list of questions, like, here are some topics we might cover. And then they like write it out.
Oh.
And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I
not
know.
cool.
That's why, when we were doing, John and I work really hand in hand. I feel very fortunate that, it started out at the library when I was working at the library, so that we worked really together on developing this. My sort of dream, he'd been in radio for a long time. And so we collaborated on how to find the right way of working it. And he was like, well, do you want to have a, like intro, like this is who the person is, and like what, or do you want to have a set certain questions? And I vacillate between like, maybe I should have a set of questions. Maybe I should introduce them in a different way. But again, I'm like, well, there's lots of ways to find out like who they are and like connect with them in other ways. But this is the most natural that I can find to connect about people to get to where I'm hoping that we'll get to, that has some sort of meaning for other people out there, that'll live within other people to make they can then make a relationship with you somehow, through.
And it works so well because this is who you are.
Right. Good point.
I couldn't do this. I couldn't do what you're doing.
Yeah.
I need a little more prep.
Yeah.
But because of who you are, you're really great at this. And so you're putting your particular unique creative expression on this.
Right.
In a way that I just do it a little bit differently.
Yes.
We both come up with the same result, which is great conversations with other people.
Right. Because my framework then, instead of questions, is time. So it's about an hour. We're going to have 3 segments of 17. So it's like, here's the playground. These are the dimensions of the playground. We can play within it for an hour.
Right.
And that's it. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Oh my gosh, I should do that. I have different parameters, I guess, right?
Yeah, right. Like what works for you, and how do we source out and suss out? And how do you trust yourself?
I feel like too that I have made so many, I guess, mistakes or things that I definitely would have done differently, things that I have changed over time. This is not an easy process to learn. I knew nothing about recording. I knew nothing about really interviewing or editing or marketing, like all of those things. I am winging this.
Yeah.
I am throwing pasta at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah.
So
what was the spark to do that? Like, why were you like was it April of 2020? What did you say?
So
why were you like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it every week. What was that? What happened?
Well, this came from me finding studio space and not feeling like I could find a community.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
My original idea was to interview artists in Milwaukee in person, go into their studios, and I wanted to take pictures of their studio space because I love those magazines where you get to like see people's studio space.
Totally.
And I'm so fascinated with how they organize things and how messy it is and just all the paint splatters on the floor. So I thought, somehow I'm going to get photos of their studio and we're going to do all this in person. And I thought about it. I hemmed and hawed for months and months and months. And I have to say, shout out to my husband. I'll never forget this. We were driving back from Madison. We were in the car for an hour and a half. And I was thinking about starting the podcast. I hadn't started it yet. And I said, you know what? I don't think I can do it. Like, I don't think there's enough time in the day. I have to give something up. Working full time. This is going to take a lot of time. I still want to do, some creative thing. And he just looked at me and he said, Margret, you have to do this. You are meant to do this. You cannot not do this. And he was so adamant about this. He's always been super supportive of anything that I wanted to do, but I've never heard him with such passion. He was almost yelling at me in a way, like, you have to do this. And I think I started to cry and I was like, I don't know if I can. And it's all very dramatic. But he believed in me in this way that I didn't see that I could do this.
Man.
And I went home and I was like, oh man, I signed up for the podcasting fellowship through Seth Godin, which was like a, 8-week, 12-week course that started in January of 2020. in March of 2020, we were like halfway through and the world shut down.
Yeah.
We had to bring our son home from England. Everything was chaotic and everyone dropped out of that. Half the people dropped out of that course. And then about, I don't know, in May, they said, okay, everything's going to go away soon. So I went back in and I did the rest of those modules on my own.
Yeah.
And I did everything. And I thought I paid good money for this, so I'm going to get what I can out of it. And I thought, I can't go into people's studios anymore.
Yeah.
But I guess I'll just figure out Zoom. And I did it because I wanted to know how other people got through it. And I think in the beginning, I thought, if I can find the magic formula of how to become a professional artist, maybe I can do this too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that was subconsciously.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about that right now. This is one of those aha moments, Erica.
See?
You did it. We're almost at the end, but there we go. So, and what happened was it took so much time and it was so wonderful. And I think I wanted to talk to people every single week because I needed it. Yeah. I needed to talk to people when we couldn't see anyone in person.
Yeah.
When I couldn't go out to a show, to an exhibit, and so I just became its own thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. I mean, from the champion to support you and your husband, that was a really amazing moment. We all need people in our lives to believe in us when we're too afraid or to try, but our passion is there, or our interest, and to have people that support you and that believe in you and that you'll figure it out. And so much of what we do is through these conversations that I've had, people are like, yeah, I didn't really choose to do this. I just kind of figured it out. I was like, oh, this might be okay. Or, oh, I'm really interested in this, but I have no idea how to do it. And that drive is such a thing to listen to.
And I love to learn new things. So it was really fun to delve into a project like that.
Yeah.
And I think also there was some, I had lower expectations for myself because I wasn't trying to make a living from it.
Oh, sure.
And so the pressure was off a little bit. I didn't have a boss.
You're not using good paper.
Right. I used the shitty scratch pad.
That's right.
I was like, well, if it's, who's going to listen anyway?
Yeah, it makes a difference.
No one knows I'm doing this. How do you get it? How do you get your message out there?
Right.
So, from the first podcast of 100 downloads, how exciting.
Yeah.
I had 50 people or whatever listen.
Yeah.
And now it's more. I mean, I don't know. There's a million podcasts out there. So I'm still struggling on how to get the word out there, and I'm not doing a great job marketing, but I'm leaning into that a little bit more.
Marketing is so hard.
It is. So, 2025, I retired from my day job in May. And so
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Nice job.
Thanks. I'm not retired. I still have to do things, but it's given me more time to figure out how to do coaching and podcasting full time and how I'm going to lean into that. So,
right.
I'll say it here again and then maybe I'll do it. I'm going to go back to weekly episodes. I have a guest host who's going to interview a few people. So I'm super excited about that.
Cool.
Starting next year.
Nice.
And yeah. So we'll see.
That's awesome.
We'll see what comes of all that.
As we're winding down, is there anything that you'd like to share or say that you didn't get to?
Oh, I always ask people that. I wasn't prepared for this. I should have been. No, I just think that you said it earlier. We all need a champion. We all need someone in our life. I my latest interview that came out was with Sierra Berry, who's the program director. You know
so
Sierra.
great. Yeah.
And she's the program director for the arts industry residency at John Michael Kohler Arts Center here in Sheboygan. And she talked about how she makes sure that the artists feel creative, comfy, and cared for.
Oh,
and I was like,
the 3 C's.
what? That's awesome.
It's great.
Like, everyone needs a buddy. It doesn't have to be a family member.
Yep.
It could be someone you know in person, someone you've met online.
Yeah.
But like, have someone who you can turn to and talk to so you feel like what you're doing that validates what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because everyone needs that validation. And it doesn't matter what it is that you're doing.
Nope.
We just need to be kinder to people, allow them to be who they are,
Yeah.
and to create whatever that they want to create in the way that they need to do it. And you can always find something nice to say about everyone.
Yeah.
I don't care. You just can.
Yeah.
So do that. Be nice to people. Sorry.
Don't be sorry. I love it. That's so good. Oh my gosh, Margaret, this has been such a lovely, lovely conversation. And so when people want to listen to your podcast, tell us how they can find you.
It's Authentic Obsessions, just like it sounds. And they can listen anywhere. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on all the streaming platforms. You can go to my website, AuthenticObsessions.com. I'm that on Instagram. I'm also MargretPetrie.com for coaching. And I have a Margret.Petrie Instagram account. So there you go. And thank you so much. This went so fast. This was such a great conversation.
Yay.
And I can't wait to go to lunch and continue. So
Yes.
Thank you, Erica.
Yay. Thanks so much, Margaret. Huge thanks to Mead Public Library, the fantastic Melissa Prentice, Josh Littner, Annalisa Finca, the radio committee, our amazing engineer, John Tully, and for the title, Photo and Fabulous, theme music composed and performed by Cooper Deers.
In the Act is produced in the studios at Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. More information on the web at meadpl.org.